Welcome to JEDI Conversations with 901 Consulting. My name is Khalil Sadiq, founder of 901 Consulting. Today, we will be speaking with the president of the Collaborative in Chelsea, Gladys Vega. The Collaborative is a Latin-led organization founded in 1988 that has served as a steadfast, reliable, and bold ally to the Latinx immigrants in Greater Boston for over 35 years. Operating in the gateway cities of Chelsea, East Boston, Everett, Lynn, Revere, and Malden, the Collaborative specializes in stabilization solutions in the area of food and housing security, promoting economic progress, celebrating cultural heritage, and cultivating immigrant leadership to effective policy and systemic change for long-lasting community benefit. So I want to just thank you for allowing me to come in your space and actually have this conversation about DEI today. If you could, I know we have a train in the background, could you tell us a little bit about you and more about your role at the Collaborative?
Sure. So I am originally from Puerto Rico.
Okay.
I came at the age of 9. I have 2 other sisters and a brother that passed away.
Okay.
And both of my parents passed probably over 15 years ago. I grew up in the city, seeing all the changes in demographics, all the challenges that a poor income community has. That understanding that and seeing that was never my excuse not to get our hands dirty and not to get involved in trying to transform our city and include about social change. I always mention that I grew up extremely poor, but I never let that bother me because I know that we wanted to do better as a community together, and that organizing was a way of going in a community that was very marginalized, and a community that was very poor, and a community that was very diverse. Diversity at times brings about stereotypes most of the times. And I think it's about each individual to address that and to change that. I think what happens at times is that we hide in the excuse of poor communities, marginalized communities, in order for us not to make it. And for me, being a person of color, being a person that grew up poor, doesn't mean that that's the way that I'm going to live through my journey. It's about a very individual choice, and I have made it my business to make that. Our young people, whenever I have a chance to talk to the many youth that work in our city, but in La Colaborativa's year-round employment programs, I always talk about, I was that young person that at a very early age pulled my mattress to the kitchen, turned the oven on, and that was my heat. Because we had no electricity, or because we had no money to pay oil. But what happened in those 4 walls never were my excuse not to make it. I always saw that as a place that I would look back in knowing that I didn't want that for me, not for my community. And for me, diversity is a beautiful, beautiful thing when we make it work and we make it our own individual business and our own growth. It's not a handicap. And a lot of people think that, oh, you come from Chelsea, you have to be, poor, you have to be a criminal, you have to be on welfare. Those are stereotypes that I remove them, continue with our journey. And I think that those are little pebbles in the stones that fall in the path. And what you got to do is try to take them off. If they're too heavy, you go around them. Right. But that's how I've seen this journey of making sure that everyone is at the table. And even if you don't invite me to the table, if you're talking about Latinos and you're talking about community members, don't invite me. I still show up. And I show up because you're talking about us.
Love it. You know, we talked a little bit before we started, and I mentioned about how so much is changing in the DEI landscape. That's diversity, equity, inclusion for those who don't know. And in particular, last year, the Supreme Court came down and said that race-based admissions were no longer constitutional. And they really weren't constitutional in the first place, but it had to take the courts to get involved. So this has been a shockwaves across the industry. Some companies, some schools are being sued. There's lawsuits, there's litigation. A lot of organizational leaders who are DEI champions are now wondering what they should do with their DEI program. So I'm going to pose this question to you, Gladys. What were your views about that decision that happened last year? And how are you, if any, or how are you addressing the issues centered around the Supreme Court when it comes to race-based admissions?
So I'm divided by multiple emotions, and as I think about it, I always think that I can demonstrate who I am as an individual. And there are times there's certain individuals that don't need a PERT or an admission policy in order for them to get it. It's just that large institutions, at times, when this policy changed, I got nervous about it because although I can prove to you that many of our community members and our students and our youth are able to make it just because they're smart, just because they have characters, just because they're resilient, just because if they made it through crossing the border with their parents or know the journey of their parents, they will take this opportunity and shine. It's just that not every institution it's in a location to make them feel welcome, to give them the special attention necessary when you come from a community of color. So I can explain this to you. Growing up in Chelsea, my high school class advisor, or my the guy who had probably 200 students that he was sort of like advising for college and all that stuff, told me, Miss Vega, continue working. When I asked about college and getting into college, he said, Miss Vega, continue to work in Stewart's department store because you have an accent and you're not going to be able to make it. And this was my school counselor. And I was a high school student. If the taking out of admission policy connected with someone like my high school counselor in terms inside of a college, that's where I feel like if you change this policy, let it be known that we need diversity initiative staff inside that will go out of their way to make sure that you have the SAT, that if you are score low, that they're going to help you. And for me, it's not so much about my color because I can do whatever I want because it's very individual choice. I have my own choice, right? But it's more about understanding that people of color or people that come from a community like Chelsea may never have a chance to apply for college. First, because they're probably the first generation of people that are interested in applying. Second, because their school has never been a priority because a part-time job flipping burgers is a priority in order for that amount of little money that they have coming can pay one of the utility bills in a household. If you don't know that and you're in a private fancy institution, that many of the residents that come from community like this one don't have those resources when they get to college, they get lost and they get to a place that they're going to say, why am I going to try? And you may have a lost opportunity in talent in a person that may be the next president of the United States, a person that they just because growing up in Chelsea, their platter of choices that they had in front of them was how to put a buck in their pockets in order for them to help their family not lose their housing, not get, their electricity shut off. So I think that when you change policies like that, should not be just about the multitude of including everyone. You like if you change the policy, please make it a habit that when you have a person of color that has that potential, a student in general, my skin doesn't determine my ability to learn, my ability to want to go for that. Right. But I may not know the process. I may be that student where I'm a first generation. I am hardly able to keep the appointment to meet with the advisor because my part-time little job I need to make it there. So I think when the policy changed, I'm like, the change was not good for me just because it's going to blindfold the status quo, not to allow me to go all the way in. Mm-hmm. I make it to the door, but because I don't understand the process, you may not see me. Mm-hmm. And I think with the admission policy, the diversity, inclusion, admission policy, it allowed for the staff inside to go a little bit of the extra mile. Mm-hmm. And I think the extra mile should be granted, it should be for every student, but understand that not every student come with the challenges in our households that we had. Every student doesn't come with a counselor that believes that you can do it. My counselor never believed I was going to be able to make it. He probably thinks she's going to be a teen pregnancy. She's going to be an alcoholic like her mom. And she's not going to make it. And that's why he said, don't go to school. Continue working at Stewart's department because that's what you're good for because of your accent. If I wouldn't have that thrive in making you look bad and telling you, yeah, that stereotype, you'll soon be changed. Even if it took me 35 years, I did it not because of your help. I did it because of my own willingness to do it and my own struggles in knowing that I had to make it to show the 1,000 Gladys Vega that are right next to me or behind me or in front of me or on my side that we can make it together because it's about our motivation, it's about our knowledge, our character, it's about knowing where we don't want to be. And when I raised my kids as a single mom, I knew that I didn't want to pull that mattress from the bedroom to the kitchen because that's not the way I wanted to raise my kids. That was how my mom raised us because we had no other choice. But that's not the choice I wanted for my kids, and that's why I made it. But if I have to flip burgers again, I would do it with dignity, respect, and love for the career and for making money in a legal way.
There's so much that has been going on when it comes to the DEI issue and the education. Supreme Court is just one of those cases. Just this year, the largest human resource organization, SHRM, changed their policy when it came to DEI. Yeah. They got rid of the E out of the formula. And based on SHRM, they're saying they're making their decision based on data. A lot of contention is around equity. Yeah. What does it mean? So once again, here's another question for the president. What is the definition of equity from you? When you think about equity, how do you define it? And how does it live itself out in the work that you do?
I think for me, equity, it's about if I have a little bit more, okay, it's my responsibility to think about everyone else. That's how I see it. I see it as if I have a little bit more knowledge or if I can advocate as I have done for immigration, even though I was born a citizen of the United States, it is my responsibility to help others that are not yet citizens to become citizens. So that's how I see equity play out. I see it as if you have a little bit more knowledge, it's my responsibility to pay back that knowledge by sharing the level of education or the level of knowledge I have. It's for the human race. It's my responsibility for just being. That's how I see it.
The last part of the formula is the I. Right. So we talked a little bit about diversity. You gave me a definition of diversity. You just told me a little bit about how you see inclusion. Really important. How do you make sure that people feel like they're included? Because I know you're dealing with a wide range of cultures. A lot of people are not educated about the Latino community, right? They see one person, they think, boom, all people are Mexicans. And we know that's untrue. Right. We know that's untrue. There's so many different cultures. So if I'm, coming here from the DR, is there a way in which we make sure that we are being culturally inclusive from different Latino communities that come through your door? How does that play out?
So imagine, for me, it's not only that they come from 20 Latin American countries, right?
20.
I don't only deal with that. I deal with why is La Colabortiva only working on Latinos? Okay, so Latinos represent at least 20 countries, right? And we are Afro-Caribbeans too. So, and then it could be, if that is not enough that I'm dealing with that, then you have sort of like the other migrants from Somali Bantu that have come to Chelsea.
Okay.
The people that came at one point from, ¿cómo se llama? I think it was, I want to say we had a group, it wasn't Denmark, but it was one of those Europe countries that we had come into Chelsea. It was probably like 15, 20 years ago. So it's, when you are the Latino immigration group, it's not just Latinos per se, it's any migrant. And if you think
any
about
migrant.
Exactly. And if you think of any migrants, it could be people from Europe. Right now we're dealing with Haitians, and it's a beautiful thing. So I think that what people don't understand is that it's only one language, Spanish, but we all come from different countries, and people don't get it. And I'm like,
that's diversity again.
Yes. And I'm like, what people don't realize is that I remember vividly, one woman said to me, I was working at as a cashier somewhere, and she says, "Oh my God, she said something about my skin or whatever. I get very dark in the summer. This year I haven't had a chance to have fun, but anyway, so she said, "Oh my God, where you come from?" And I said, "Puerto Rico." And she says, "No, no, 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 no. What part of Mexico you come from?"
No way.
Yes. And I said, "No, no, no. Mexico is another country. I come from Puerto Rico, a little island in the Caribbean." And she said, "Oh, you all the same. Don't explain it. You're all the same." And it was like, and she was a coworker. We both were working like this, and I think what people need to understand is that even in the same Puerto Rico, what I call a caldero or an olla in Eloisa, it may be called something else. In our same country, they people have different dialects and it may be completely different from. I'm on the south. I'm in Guayama. People in San Juan or the center part of the island may call things differently. So never mind identifying all the different dialects that all of our beautiful countries, Latin American countries and South American countries have, and how do I make it work for a community like Chelsea, for an organization like La Colaborativa that tries to be inclusive with everyone that we serve. And what I did at a very early age was a perfect example. We had a Puerto Rican festival, and I'm Puerto Rican. And back then in the 80s, there was or in the 70s, there was a huge group of Puerto Ricans in the city of Chelsea. The 80s, the Central American War happened, in El Salvador, especially in Honduras, and but especially in El Salvador, and all these immigrants began to come to Chelsea in the 80s, and then in the 90s the same. Do you actually think that we needed a Puerto Rican festival? If we wanted to be inclusive, we would need a Latin American festival. That way we highlight who we are as Latinos. I began at a very early age of my career to see us as we speak one language. Let's identify those three main issues that impact our community for as people of color. Let's figure those three issues out. Let's work together and let's get the language as the unifying force that would allow us to get systematic changes in our community. And that has been the base of my work. So we went from the Puerto Rican festival to the Latin American festival, and we would have bachata, we would have cumbia, we would have, salsa, a combination of everything. But let's celebrate our histories together.
Inclusive.
Very inclusive, because after all, we have one language that unites us. And although this is not our country, we need to enhance what this country has offered. Learn the language, but let's not forget who we are as Caribeño or Afro-Caribeña that I am.
If I could say one thing, though, I have to say, if a person comes here and they become a citizen and they start participating in America, this is your country.
Of course.
This is your country,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're a voting citizen, you're abiding by the laws, you're participating in civic functions, you want to educate the community, you volunteer, whatever the case may be, that's a part of your ownership. That's a part of equity.
Yeah.
Right. And as you spoke about inclusion, one of the things I'm really interested in knowing from you is when 2020 came about, we know there's a lot that happened, right? We know that COVID-19 was there. We know there was a racial unrest.
Yeah.
But we also know that there's a lot of money that started coming up in the system because of all these things. And when it comes to nonprofit work, funding never ends. You always are fundraising and trying to make sure that you're sustainable. When it comes to DEI, a lot of different groups are trying to get almost like the same pot of money. How do you make sure that there is true collaboration when it comes to DEI and working with different ethnicities and different cultures when it comes to collaborating on an event?
Yeah.
Have you found it difficult?
Yes.
Is there some tension at times? Because things are not always perfect when you all seem to be, finding for the same pot of money and you're all kind of, low income. You named all the things, low income, stereotype. How do you make that work? And, who's kind of your number one partner when it comes to bridging gaps in other communities?
So I think, sincerely for us, it's as La Colabortiva. So 2020, I think about 2020 a lot because it would always mark my life. It's one of those things that I mentioned to a friend of mine recently, that I have three things that would forever, I would always take for me, and they make me have PTSD, right? I have PTSD. I think that I would always have, so Hurricane Maria, for what it did in Puerto Rico, how it devastated the country, how, people, like I didn't know where my families were for 5 days. I didn't know where my sister, who has been my mother figure since my mom died, I didn't know anything about her, and how the federal government of Puerto Rico took this island that they have oppressed and taken advantage of for centuries or decades, right? And ignore how bad the hurricane was, and literally took through paper towels as if that's how, and how we probably had over 4,000 Puerto Ricans that died, and that didn't make the news. And how the resources were literally so disorganized that people died, and we didn't take care of people, our elders in the mountains this time. how hard it was to be here, not being able to do much other than like get three trailers and send them to the island, to the to the to the two churches that I identified, where they literally took the food to the people that were in the mountains in a communities that were pretty much homebound and excluded from the main big cities. So that is one. The other one for me was um global pandemic, how communities of color um were literally scrambling for the bottom of the pot to feed our community, to keep our community alive. Never mind alive not only from COVID, but alive because they had nothing to eat. You take jobs from a community that is so poor that needs at least three jobs in order for them to make it. Three jobs, one individual works in order for them to have a decent salary. You take that for almost a year and a half. What do you think you're going to continue to create massive poverty at all levels, right? Um, and then the people that die. I think the most beautiful thing about that I saw in terms of inclusion and collaboration was that Chelsea, for the first time, was a city of human beings, not a city of undocumented immigrants. And for me, that was very, very unique. Think about the resources that La Colaborativa got during that era, because people were given to the humankind, the human being. In what a world we lived back then, when race was not an issue, when your immigration status was not an issue. It was about saving lives. I think Massachusetts, they're so amazing. I never knew this type of Massachusetts with wealth and without colors. It was so freaking incredible. And it was the best thing that happened for me in the pandemic, that I was able, in my 35 years of work, to see that. I never saw Massachusetts that way. In Massachusetts, that even from their home, they were afraid in their little condominiums, in the fancy condominiums, but they kept buying diapers. They kept sending us resources. They kept sending donations. They kept being worried that people didn't have enough masks. So I think that was very unique, and it was an amazing opportunity of what we can do when we think from the heart and when we're blinded, right? When we're covered, because the critical situation was saving lives. And that for me was like, what a beautiful thing. Then, of course, the influx of Haitians in our community, how these newcomers, majority Haitians that are in a place where there's no law and order, and what are we doing to include them, to make them be part of this state, even when they came under horrible circumstances. Very talented group of people. Many of them know 2, 3, 4 languages. These children, like 5 years old, are translating for their parents, and they know French Creole. They know Haitian and Spanish, and some of them are speaking English already. I mean, what a talent, right? Or rather than saying what a talent, what a waste of talent if we America doesn't take care of enhancing that and making sure that we are all about sort of like figuring out where to put them so that they can expedite in their careers, so that they can continue to help us build America. So so for me, partnerships are different, and they're very difficult, especially because we are La Colaborativa, our administration team based partnership and hard work and boots on the ground. And we're very unique. And you don't find that a lot in our community, or you don't find a lot of that in communities of colors. We are in many communities of color. We work in silos. Partnerships are key, and I don't have a problem having those partners, those coalitions, building coalitions, so that we can, change the driver's license so that include undocumented drivers. Right? We did that. We did it 23 years ago. Chelsea was the one that wrote the bill with Eugenio Flaherty. The first driver's license bill came about Chelsea. A white man with La Colaborativas, immigrant committee, we were the one that established that idea. And then it took 23 years to get it done, right?
Okay.
But I think it's very important that when we work in partnership, the biggest challenge that a organization like Colabortiva has, because our model is so unique, is keeping people accountable. I can work with you, but if I'm giving you $50,000 to do what, you better have done that what. Well, bullshit, because it's not fair. So I think partnerships, for me, they are stronger when we critique each other, when we keep each other accountable, and when we get things done. Because we're not responsible to you and I as presidents of both organizations. We're responsible about those individuals that we knocked on their doors that are in need. Those are the people that we fundraise for. So we have built this Colaborativa based on those values and based on that notion that we hear our community first and then we create programs. And that is why we have partnerships that are very, very strong, very unique, but it's not about the quantity of partnerships. It's about the quality of partners.
Love it. And we just got Philip
Hi,
in the
Philip.
space.
Yes, ¿cómo estás? Good, good, good. How was your weekend?
Good.
How was 318?
Good, I have to go back.
Okay. ¿Y tu perrito cómo está?
It's good. My dog cut his paw last week.
Oh,
Does he
Doing
feel
better.
better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, in better spirits.
And he's not taking the little thing now?
No, I pulled Stitch out last week. That was
Okay.
bloody mess.
mm,
But I think that's past. Yeah,
That's
it's almost there.
Good, good, good. Excellent. ¿Y los jóvenes están allá bien? Yeah, okay. And there's a lot of youth over there doing the groups.
Less than I expected.
How many?
So,
Like
going
40?
30, 40.
Yeah, that's because the others are in the Williamsburg.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how we divide it. So if it's 40, that's the group that's supposed to be. Yeah, I was striked too when I saw that. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We have 200 plus youth working and we only, but no, they're spread around. So yeah, no, but I had the same reaction last week when I was, where are you? And okay.
train. How often is train?
So can you imagine this train is this loud? We advocated to get the noise reduced.
Okay.
We've been waiting for almost 3 years, and there's a elderly housing right across that where that new building is right across this elderly housing.
Yeah.
And I live probably, I would say 6 minutes away up in the hill where Home Depot is,
Okay.
Clark Avenue, right on the top. And I can hear this train every freaking time. And I hear it. Imagine those poor elderly people.
It's because it's the style of crossing. It's like the loudest option.
Yeah.
Because it's the least safe crossing. So they.
Oh,
have to-
okay. Okay.
Apparently that's why.
Okay, I
Yeah.
get it.
But
Okay.
we're working on it still.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the
It's shaking the
Yeah,
windows.
but our building, you can hear it when the doors are closed still, but it was soundproof. So we did it soundproof because
Oh,
we did the building soundproof, but still we can hear it, but it's not as bad. But it's not as bad as being outside. Like here.
yeah.
This is intense.
Because I don't remember hearing it when I came here the first time.
Yes.
Maybe because we were all inside
Inside,
most of
yeah.
the time.
It's a weird hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
you know, and I know we're going to wrap up because you guys are busy. But I just want to say thank you so much, Philip, for entering the space. I want to kind of include you into this conversation as much as possible. We have covered a lot, and the things that we've covered really have been about diversity, equity, inclusion, the definition of it. How does it play itself out at the collaborative?
Yeah.
And I would love to kind of include you into the conversation. One of the questions I would love to have you to kind of share is, what is the thing that you most like to highlight when it comes to the work that you're doing in the context of diversity, equity, inclusion? What would you like to highlight to people who are champions of DEI work?
I think this work, my biggest highlight is how active of the community we are. Wasn't necessarily fully intentional. Like, we don't hire staff specifically to match the demographics of the city, but we kind of mimic the diversity just naturally. When I came on back when we only had 13, 14 staff, I was the only white full-time staff. It was a weird place to be in. A place I had never been in, especially coming from finance and private equity. There were 6 guys all named Matt in my office before. So if you can get the vibe, but it was the best shift possible. I mean, we all speak the same languages, so that is a really good common ground, and we're all here for the same purpose. And I think that's what, no matter what, someone comes in with an experience, background, history, could be mine, you know, my side created a lot of these problems that we're trying to fix, which is why I feel a sense of agency to do it. But we're all here for the same purpose. So employees, no matter what the differences, there's cultural differences that people are coming from when they immigrate here that they might have been country neighbors that have centuries long feuds. But in here, we're all working to serve the community, create the best benefit and a lasting benefit, not something that's just a band-aid. We all want to see the equity and health and inclusion growth of this area because it's been excluded for so long. And joining during COVID, I got to see that exclusion kind of come to light finally. Eyes were on Chelsea for the first time ever, and I got to see Gladys Vega really take advantage of that to bring resources to the community that should have been here decades ago.
Speaking of that, are there anything that you can point towards as far as funding that is tied to any type of DEI initiative? That was part of our last conversation because we talked about how 2020 in so many ways was a gift and a curse.
Yeah.
We know a lot of the bad things that happened, but a lot of good things happened too.
Yeah.
And one of those things was funding opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Fantastic. And so if you're a nonprofit at the end of the day, right? You have to raise funds.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, there's still a lot of funding when it comes to DEI initiatives.
Yeah.
However, because of the new DEI landscape, things are changing.
Yeah.
So that does mean that there may be a threat when it comes to funding opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about the things that you guys do when it comes to DEI initiatives that are tied to funding, if any?
Yeah.
And are you concerned about some of the things that are happening that may put your funding at risk?
A little bit concerned. I mean, we keep a close tabs on lobbying policies, different groups that are entering the Commonwealth specifically, because it will eventually trickle down to us or end up in our inbox in some variety. But our work is inherently DEI, and when I started with workforce development, economic development, that work is about pushing these community members into roles that employers don't necessarily want them in, that they've gatekept them from for a long time. So, not really funding based, but one of our biggest DEI partnerships and initiatives is that contextualized curriculum inside of an employer. So, to make it more palatable to them, we talk, we say, what's blocking you from hiring Gladys, Khalil, whoever's applying? What's the problem? Everyone in there speaks the same language as them. What are these barriers? Usually it's language for the interview and safety protocols. So we've worked with those employers. We are the internal upskiller for them now. So there's no more excuse. Our people are ready the day they get in. They know all your safety protocols, your platforms, your systems, and then they're ready to upskill. They're all in the same class. We're building a bigger network. Employees actually get to know each other and bridge gaps through a shared education experience. And that I think has been one of the most significant initiatives we've done because our foot is more than in the door. We're sitting in the room. We are deciding the lessons that are going to the existing employees and the new ones to build this common ground and get rid of those weird just HR barriers that people are coming in with these skills. They have it. They probably have more than enough. It's just about getting the employer to see that as an opportunity rather than a barrier to hiring them. So that wasn't really funding based. Some of them do pay us, given the scale. But a lot of that came out of Mass Hire, which really helped us a lot during COVID and beyond. They've become a really strong partner, which before, they had their centers in the area in Metro North, but there wasn't a big focus on Chelsea. And a lot of those resources coming here, technology specifically, and education have been really changing, catalyzed to our economic development programs.
But I think what you say is so right. Is some of the stuff that I was mentioning to you, that the beauty of La Colabortiva or the uniqueness of La Colabortiva, that we don't create programs because there's funding out there. We listen to the community, see what the community needs, and then we address it with corporations. We address it. We don't create excuses for you not to make it. We create a path so that you can make it. And I think that's what, working with different corporations, working with some of the governmental organizations, etc. We know very well the talent that we have, the resiliency of the people, and the struggles that they have had and the challenges are not your excuse not to make it.
Yeah.
So I think that, that strength of knowing, we always say, if you did the journey of crossing the border in legal, if you had to plan to pay a coyote and leave all your loved ones over there, don't tell me that if we give you a little bit of resources right up front and we tell you, you know what, come to the classes, come and learn English, let's work towards your legal residency, etc., you're not going to make it. Of course you're going to make it, and we're going to make it together because your victory is my victory. And for me, seeing you sort of like strive for success is the biggest accomplishment La Colabortiva would ever have. And our corporations, our partners, must be about that, because if not, then don't partner with us.
Yeah. And even beyond corporations, another DEI one that was surprising, that we just address these barriers. When someone comes in, you want to be a nurse, fantastic. You were a neurosurgeon at home, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Childcare was a huge requested job, and it is just an underpinning of infrastructure for Chelsea that lacked. But before we started our initiative and joined the Care That Works coalition, all of the EEC's content was only in English. So if you wanted to become a childcare provider, you had to fully learn English to follow this compliance, strong start, the whole thing. And we just met with the EEC, spoke with them, advocated, had a group of over 80 local childcare providers and soon to be childcare providers here saying, we just need the resources to do this. We have the knowledge, the skills. And it took the EEC about a year and a half, but now they have 7 languages on there. So they were the most responsive state agency that I've seen do something like that so far. Very mission driven. We all agree that we need childcare for this infrastructure. So whatever consultants they hired to do that translation, they pulled it off pretty quickly, and we were all able to deploy over 30 new childcare providers during that time. So it's about finding those holes, barriers that might just be a systemic thing that the state hasn't thought about that because, they're preaching DEI and other aspects, but not looking at the systems that have been existing for 30 years. New initiative, sure, but there's a lot of backlog that we work to clear up.
Yeah. When you think about inclusion, this is inclusion.
Yeah.
Like we changed the childcare policies in 7 different languages. It's not just for Chelsea. It's not like this is only for Chelsea, don't touch it. I mean, this is for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Same thing we did with the driver's license, and same thing that we continue to do when it comes to housing. I mean, the Homes Act, the whole sort of like impeachment bill was basically, imagine you were a child and your mom gets evicted. Once you turn 21, because your name appear on the lease of the rental, now you turn 21, you want to be able, you go to college, you want to be able to get your own apartment, you're in this Massachusetts list as a person that got evicted. Why would you penalize someone like that? So what we did recently that we won also, so we worked on that throughout the pandemic. We removed the requirement for only the adult to be on that. And then because of the pandemic and the aftermath of all the economic challenges that our community members were having, we basically work on a bill to taking that whole eviction, that your name out of the eviction policy. That, because imagine during the pandemic nobody worked, so everyone pretty much got eviction notices. Why am I going to be on a list in the state where, and plus the database is not good. Because I have never left Chelsea. I have always lived all my life in Chelsea, Massachusetts since I came at the age of 9. I have worked here for 35 years, and my name appears in this database 10 times as Gladys Vega has gotten evicted. I have never left that. So it's not the most reliable source anyways. So we got that out. And that's inclusion. For me, when it comes about access to social changes that are very transformative, that's what we do at a local level that impacts our Commonwealth in a holistic way.
As we end, this has been fantastic to kind of hear more about what the collaborative is doing when it comes to DEI, how you defined it, some of the impact measures. I guess lastly, let's talk a little bit about the future. What advice would you give to organizational leaders when it comes to their DEI initiatives? One thing that I love about the collaborative is that, from what I noticed, and you two can tell me if I'm wrong or not, you don't necessarily have a DEI policy, but the thing about you is that your policies embody DEI, if
Yes.
people can understand. And in my opinion, at 901, this is what we want to teach people how to do.
Yes.
You don't have to have a promise to do the work that you do should be embodied by you, right? And so that's what I love about the collaborative is that you don't have to have a written out DEI policy to know how to impact the principles of DEI. What advice would you give to our organizational leaders who may have concerns about their DEI initiatives and want to know, what direction should they go in?
So I think for me, it's not about the policy, it's about the practice.
Right.
And it's for me, it's executing that practice and that mindset set every day with each individual. I think that the success of La Colaborativa is that I don't need to have a glossy document for my diversity initiative committee. Let's create that. I don't have to do that because every day we practice that. Every day that is embedded in every project that we do, and we don't create no excuses for it. We're Latino-led organization, 2 females of color. That's what you see, that's what you get, and it's real.
I mean, I felt like a bit of an exception at the time. I had never been to Chelsea before. Um, it's like, who are these people to give me a chance to come to this community and help them in some way during COVID? Um, so I'm glad that I was able to embody it, but I've seen a lot of people come and go during that time.
Yeah.
It is such difficult work that I think if your heart is not in the right place, you're not going to last.
Yeah.
No matter what your background is, if you're not approaching this with understanding and dignity and respect, then it's not going to work for either party involved. You have to be receptive to what you're going to hear from clients, that community members come in and they'll just do it. Something happened to them that day, they feel safe here. You have to be ready to receive it. And it takes specific type of people to handle that. I mean, if someday all of our Indeed applications turn to random white people, I'll be very surprised. I think it's a lot of background and what creates someone that wants to do this type of work. A lot of it, like Gladys Teeny, this is your community. You want to help neighbors, your friends, family, and that makes sense. A lot of the new staff that we get that might be transplants like me, Central Mass or other states, whatever it is, they see the impact that we're creating and know that this is a place that we can create systemically changing work. You're not just, going to one crisis, dropping in and building a house, for example, and then flying back home. That's not the follow here. We stay with someone, we're there for years. Even I'm talking to clients that I met with 4 years ago to make sure that their tracks are still going well. They're still in classes, still upskilling. So yeah, we embody it as a policy. It's not quite regimented down. We're very lucky just that it's happened naturally. We have really awesome diversity of nationalities. People have come from all different countries, different cities. But the core of making an impact in Chelsea is the vein that runs through. As long as that's there, people tend to last.
Love it. Love it. Thank you once again for joining us in these JEDI conversations. This is the collaborative, and I'm hoping that we will follow up with you guys soon with your policies and practices and learn more. So thank you again.
Gracias. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. So that's fantastic. So I don't know how you do. Thank you so much.
We have a gala coming up, so